Hey, hey, welcome to Your Best Podcast, your place for conversations, information, and expert tips on how to experience your next best. Today, we have Michelle Steiner. She is a writer and just an all around inspirational figure. I know you're going to love her and her story. So, welcome, Michelle.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, me too. You know, you really have a very powerful story, and it begins with something that people wouldn't know by looking at you. So why don't we start there, and you can kick it off with that.
Sure. What a lot of people don't know about me when they first meet me or first see me is that I have a disability. A lot of people think when they think about disabilities, they think about ones that they can see, such as somebody has a physical disability where they're in a wheelchair, or maybe Down syndrome, where we can look at their face and we can be able to indicate some facial features that might be with that. Or somebody that just might have another type of disability where they might have a cane or they might have a crutch. But I have a learning disability. I have dyscalculia, which is a math learning disability, and I have limited hand dexterity in both of my hands that was not diagnosed until I was an adult. And I also have visual perception issues, but it's in my brain, not in my eyes.
Wow, that's big. That third one
Mm-hmm.
is really big because I can imagine, well, in each case, right? In each case, but the third one, I can imagine what you might have went through just trying to discover what you were experiencing, navigating medical professionals since it wasn't in the expected place, so to speak.
Exactly. Even when I was first diagnosed with just having a learning disability in kindergarten, they did not have a name for it. They didn't call it dyscalculia. They knew I had a disability and they knew I was really struggling in the classroom with things such as tying my shoes, writing my name, and also anything math related. We may not have had a name for it when I was 5 or 6, but the school psychologist determined that I was not going to be a mathematician.
Yeah, it's funny, okay? Because please explain a little bit about what your experience was with math because a lot of kids, or maybe a lot of kids like me, we just didn't like math or didn't identify with math. So how was, especially as such, a small child, is it like not just not liking math, but actually there's something going on?
I think one of the first things that a teacher can notice is a child is really struggling in the classroom. And one of the things about special education is it's not just, oh, I see a kid that's really struggling. Let's sign them up for learning support services. That doesn't happen. First of all, it's a three tier approach. So we will come in and a teacher might notice that a young child is having a difficulty with math or some other concepts. So she might try to say, okay, let me pull this child aside. Let's try to work with them a little bit and see if that helps. Maybe moving their seat. That could be something that you can do if they're having difficulties. And when none of that's working, then we might have somebody that'll come in and they'll make an observation. They might just see how they're performing in the classroom. And part of that is to see if further testing needs to be done, or even if maybe the teacher, there's something that maybe she can do or he can do in the classroom that's going to best support that child that the teacher is missing out on. And I was one of those kids, though, that with all those other tiers, I was still struggling in the classroom, and they recommended that I had learning support and to get tested for that.
Mhm.
And that's also something we can test on too. We can see if a child is maybe just okay, math isn't their thing. They're not going to be the math genius, but they can get through a math class without any supports. That's one thing we can sometimes see on test a lot. We can look at our scores and say, oh, she's really good at English and reading, maybe needs a little extra support with that, but we can see the math is a really low level. Another way I can also tell is there are certain things that it's really hard for me to do that I still cannot do to this day. I'm not able to read the face of an analog clock.
Mm.
I have difficulty. I confuse my right from my left, and I can't read like a measuring stick or uh, the beam balances like whenever, yeah, for a science class. So those are some things that we've done countless interventions on, and I just couldn't get it.
Want the mindset that helped me build strength and confidence while living with brittle bones? My books share the lessons, stories, and strategies that made me unbreakable, even when the world said I couldn't. Grab your copies now at TonyJacobson.com/books.
And another thing is, even if I'm at a math class, at college or even when I was in school, I could study for hours for a test and still fail it. Someone who's not really great at math, they might go into a class and they might work really hard. They might even get tutoring like I had to do, but they're going to be able to maybe squeak by with having a C and maybe even better than that. And it may not be something that they're really wonderful at, but it's something that they can do and get a decent enough grade without a lot of supports.
I love how you've explained this. And then this kicks off really kind of the meat of this wonderful inspiration that you provide with your life and with your experience. Because first of all, thank you for clearing that up, because if someone is a parent or someone has the experience like I explained, like, oh, well, maybe I don't like this. Maybe they can identify some things for their child or for themselves that they might not be aware of, right? Or also take some things off the table. But really now, so here you're diagnosed with this disability, and all of a sudden, people start counting you out.
Yeah.
Right? So really, really, when people start telling you you can't do things, how does that sit with you? What is in your nature at this time, even though you're very young? How did that affect you?
It was really hard whenever I was a small child. I think it was more the bullying at that age, because I came into a different school where I had to repeat kindergarten. And I went to a very small conservative school district where everybody knew each other. And if you were one of them, you fit in with them. And I was not one of them. My disability made me stick out. And that was one of those things. So it was really hard. People didn't think that I could be their friend or I was a valuable class member. I faced that even in learning support and in regular ed. Not very many people struggle with math in learning support. They had reading and behavior issues, so I was picked on in those classes. And then when I went to regular ed, everybody just lumped me in with learning support students, and they didn't say they could also see that I really struggled even with having the accommodations in the classroom. So that was one of my first taste of, well, I don't want to be with you because you have a disability. And then as I got older, school got a lot easier for me academically. I was in all regular ed classes except for math and science. But then the big question became, well, what am I going to do when I'm done with high school? I knew that I wanted to go to college, but I wasn't naive to the fact that it was going to be difficult. I understood, especially math. I mean, that was always going to be the biggest challenge for me, was taking some of those courses. And I wasn't alone in my fears. I had a learning support teacher who told me, well, I don't think you can handle going to college because of your math difficulties. And she suggested a trade school. And it's really interesting when I look at a trade school, people think that that's easier. And some of those and it's not true. Some of those programs would have been a lot harder for me than going to my college courses. We didn't know so much about the hand dexterity, but I knew that if I had to cut somebody's hair, I don't think I could. I knew I couldn't make it straight. I remember some really botched haircuts on my baby dolls when I was young. So I thought, okay, that's definitely not the career for me. I also, not being able to drive because of the visual perception, I don't know how I would be able to drive a police car for protective services. And cooking I probably could do, but I don't think that's just, my heart just wasn't in on doing all those things. And I just look at that and I thought that wasn't the right path for me. So I decided I was going to go to college, and I still faced more stigma. I had to get tested for a learning disability all over again. And I had a psychiatrist who evaluated me who said, well, based on your scores, you're most likely not going to go beyond a community college. I get to community college and there's still a stigma. When I asked for a calculator in a math class, I had a professor that said, oh no, we use our brains in this class. I also had people that thought that using accommodations was cheating. And I even had a professor who told me, well, you're going to have limited job choices when you graduate. So a lot of times people were placing a lot of those things on me. And at that time, I wasn't one of these people that said, well, I'm going to do it to prove you wrong. I was going through it not knowing what I was doing, it afraid. I didn't know what the results were going to be,
Mhm.
but I knew that I had to try, and things did work out for me in my life.
See, I love finding this out because everyone is different, right? So some
Mhm.
people will hear this information,
Yeah.
okay, and all these no's and all of this isolation and all of this
Mhm.
stigma, and then it almost becomes something they adopt because it's just constantly repeated. And so it gets to be like, well, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm such an anomaly in this situation. Maybe I'm so far out in my thinking or my expectation. Maybe they're right. And so
Mhm.
they kind of have that placed on them. And then some folks will say, like, you know what? Because you tell me all of this, I'm going to prove you wrong. And they get, that's their motivation or their fire. Now, I
Right.
love what you have said. What you have said is so powerful for every person that is spending this time with us because you did it afraid. You did it
Yep.
afraid. You had the normal human emotions. You didn't completely adopt what people were saying, but you also weren't completely fighting against it. You were just moving forward toward your vision, toward your dream for yourself. So
Yes.
that's very powerful. And now tell me, was this nurtured in your family, or was it just something you held inside as a hope? What kept you going when things were getting tough? What kept you going when, it was yet another person telling you this, What were some of the things?
Well, I was really lucky to have parents who never gave up on me. My mom and dad advocated for me while I was in school, and we spent a lot of long, tearful homework sessions together, frustrated. So, I mean, they really laid that foundation. And another thing they wanted me to do in life was to know how to take care of myself and to be independent. They wanted me to have a job. They wanted me to have a life where I was going to be living separate from them. I mean, definitely, I'm still blessed to have them in my life, and
Okay.
they live close by. But my mom and dad know that they're not going to be here forever, so they wanted me to have that experience. To know how to take care of myself, so that was always really instilled in me to be independent. And I also have had wonderful friends too in my life that they could be supportive of me. I can remember when I was in college and I was really struggling, they couldn't fix my disability. They couldn't fix the class that I was really struggling in. But what they could do is be my friend, and we could just go and we could laugh and we could talk about it. And I think sometimes that was a gift too. I also have a great husband who takes me to work in the morning because I'm not able to take myself there, and I have a great coworker that takes me home at the end of the day. And I'm also able to live in a central location where I'm able to walk to places, and that's brought a lot of joy in my life too. um, I get to take pictures of beautiful flowers, and I love to be able to read and to write and to work out. And when I engage in all those things to bring me happiness, I don't feel like I have a disability. I'm a much more happy, positive person when I lean in on my strengths.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic. And you've touched on some really key points that I think are
Mm-hmm.
powerful for all of us to adopt. So,
Mm-hmm.
doing it afraid is a big one because,
Mm-hmm.
I have a confidence building course, and in my course, what I'm doing is I'm helping us all to see and strengthen our ability to engage our confidence like a muscle, because the truth is fear doesn't go away. We just learn how to move through it, or we learn how to understand it. We learn when it's a real thing and when it's actually not
Mm-hmm.
being honest with us, So it's a good thing. So I love what you said about doing it afraid, because that's just such a wonderful, empowering mantra to hold, because we all have fear and we all have things that we're going to have
Mm-hmm.
to walk through, right? But you also
Right.
did something really key, is that you surrounded yourself and allowed yourself to receive support. A lot of us maybe have trouble with that. And did you ever feel like you didn't want it? Was it something that you naturally encouraged? Were there ever moments where you had to allow people to support you when maybe you didn't want to? How have you navigated that? Or is it something that's natural that's come to you just throughout your life?
Well, I can remember when I was a teenager, it was really difficult for me, especially socially, because when I was in school, a lot of the groups that I just really felt lost. Everybody seemed to have a group to hang out with when they became more solidified, and I didn't have one. So I knew I wasn't going to have that connection at school. So what I ended up doing was I found an arts group just right outside of my school district whenever I was in 10th grade, I believe. And I started hanging out with them, and I could shed that layer of being an outcast. And it just was really helpful to have other students that shared the same interest that I did. And that also came natural with after I was done with that group. I found an adult writing group, and 20 some years later, we still meet once a month to talk about our writing. And they got to see me grow as a writer and as a person. So I think that really helped out. But I think when I was a lot younger, it was harder because I didn't want to go to learning support. I didn't want to do my homework, but my parents made me do all those things. And doing all that really made that difference. And I also think it was hard too, especially after high school, to become that advocate. I wanted to hide. I just thought to myself, well, if I just try hard enough and if I go in there with this positive attitude, my disability is going to go away and it's my fault because I'm not working hard enough. And really, when it came down to it, asking for help and learning how to be an advocate is what enabled me to graduate with my associate's degree.
Yes.
And then when I went back, and when I went back to university, I knew I'm like, all right, if I don't do well in a class, it's not the end of the world. Try to do your best. But I also knew to carefully research programs that had the least amount of math and science possible, that had disability accommodations, and to use them, and also to advocate for myself. I would go up to a professor, and at the beginning of every time I had a class, if it was a new person, I would say, my name is Michelle. I have a learning disability, and these are the services I'm going to need. Most of them got the message and were willing to do anything they could do to help. I have some great memories of that. And I had a couple that didn't quite get the memo, but I knew how to handle that. And because of me advocating for myself, I graduated with that bachelor's degree despite being told I couldn't do it. And that's been a skill I have to take with me everywhere. I have to take it with me when I go to work because my employers can't see that I need an accommodation. So it's very important that I learn to speak up for myself and to be positive about the disability, but also to be very clear on what I need because nobody can see that. And all the kids know, and I also work as a paraeducator at a school, a teacher's aide, and all the kids know, or we'll soon find out, I cannot help you with math. And I'm okay with that. I've made my peace with doing so much of that. And I think it's that speaking up and just allowing that support in where you need it at.
I love that, Michelle. That's so powerful for all of us, honestly. It really is so powerful for all of us because we all encounter times when we need help. And the struggle to ask for that help just prolongs that inevitable feeling of need or of isolation or whatever it is we're going through. So that's powerful for all of us. And, quite frankly, whether it is romantic relationships or even friendships, like, to be honest, just in our emotions, like people can't just always see what we feel or see what's wrong or what's going on. So that thought of advocating and being, like you said, I'm okay with sharing what I need. And that is so powerful for all of us, like in every situation in life. I think that's very beautiful. And I love that, you communicate that and own that from such a wonderful place, because that's really all it is. All of us need help at some point, right? All of us need to express ourselves clearly. So yes, so awesome. Let's see. When things do get tough, right? When things get tough, now you have had such a wonderful experience walking and owning your truth and navigating some things that were really challenging. But like life, right? Things might get tough nowadays. What are some things that bring you back to center when things get tough, or maybe when someone tells you can't do something these days, or,
One of the things that I have to do is I have to focus in on finding ways to do things, because not everything, it may not be the one way to solve a problem. So I come up with something. When I encounter a challenge, I have to figure out, well, okay, what's a way I can deal with this? For example, if I'm in the kitchen and my hands just can't open up a jar, I have certain kinds of little grips that I can use. I also have jar openers, or trying to operate a manual can opener is like trying to open up a spaceship, operate a spaceship. So, I mean, I have an electric one, and I can't read the display on a clock. So I have to use my Fitbit or another digital display because I can't read an analog clock. And I even see that with just so many of the things I encounter in my everyday life as a problem, but I have to be that creative problem solver to figure out, well, what can I do to help improve this? And I can look at maybe one of my passions, which is flowers. I love to grow and I love to plant flowers. I love to do a lot of container gardening. Now I have a front porch and a back deck. And there's flowers that are on my front porch. I put begonias and some mums on the front porch, and they don't need a lot of sun. Well, maybe the mums need a little more, so I can put them out front. But they all need water, and some things I might put on the back. I might put pansies or daisies on the back porch, or some impatiens. And impatiens need a lot of sun, and they need to also have water as well. But if I would put them in the shade, they wouldn't grow and thrive to what they can do. And the same with begonias. If I would put them in the bright sunlight, they would wither. And when we're talking about disabilities, the same goes with that. Not everybody needs the same thing. Some people might need those accommodations, so they're able to learn, but other people might not need that. And sometimes it can benefit everybody. Like everybody needs to have that the rain and water and moisture on that. But when we go, and other people might need less. But what the thing is, we don't change the flower. I can't make a begonia into a daisy. I can't turn a pansy into into a mum, or things like that, or a violet. It's still the same flower, and they have different needs. But what we can change is the environment. We can put the flowers that need all that sun, and the ones that need the shade, we can put it in the shade. And the same thing goes with having a disability. We got to think outside the box, and I have to think, okay, well, what do I need to be able to thrive? I can't get rid of the disability, but how can I fix my environment so I can be successful?
That's so beautifully put. That is so beautifully put, honestly. I love how you liken it to flowers, because that's exactly it. Every flower is absolutely beautiful. Every flower brings amazing qualities, whether to the landscape or to the environment, or to the various pollinators that, might need what it has. But like you say, every flower has something very special that will allow it to thrive, not because there is something wrong with the flower. It just thrives in the environment it thrives in. That's what it was designed for. And that's really beautiful because, again, this is another aspect where doesn't that fit humanity, right? So each of us have this wonderful way, these qualities, these characteristics, these talents, right? But we're not all going to thrive in the same soil, in the same light, in the same, temperature. Beautifully put. I love that so much. That's very powerful. Now we talked about a little bit, like so you get diagnosed with your disability, and then you're, told you can't do stuff, but you end up not only successfully achieving your, grade school, high school career, but then you go on to college, which no one expected. You graduate with your degree. You become a teacher's aide, which is very powerful because now you're helping others learn. What does that mean to you? Do you ever just sit back and kind of pinch yourself and say, wow, this is really amazing? Is this what I'm meant to do? How does that hit you, this wonderful, arc of your story?
I think whenever I work with students, I do feel like this is what I was meant to do because I knew I always wanted to work with students, but I knew being a certified teacher wasn't going to be the best choice for myself because of all the testing and just sometimes some of the content I just simply couldn't get. So I found that I could still work with kids being a teacher's aide. And I feel like when I did go to university, I studied the service end of special education with community programming for Americans with disabilities. And what that has given me is an understanding of people that have them. So that has provided a lot of insight in the classroom with a lot of my students. And I do. Sometimes I feel like it's hearing a recording myself. I work with seventh graders this year, and I hear a lot of students that'll say, well, I hate my disability. I wish I didn't have it. I don't feel like I'm smart. And I get that chance to go in there with them and tell them that they are smart and that, yes, they have a disability, but I mean, it is one of those things where they can achieve their dreams. They can do that. And that plan that they have is not meant to hurt them, but it's meant to really be helpful towards them. And I really try to show my students how to advocate and also how to problem solve. Because for so many of my students, they're going to leave me, and I hope and pray that they're able to achieve every dream that they want, but their disabilities are going to be there. So it's important that we start early. In fact, today I had a student that was struggling with an activity on the computer.
Mm-hmm.
And she was saying, wow, I'm too slow with this. And I said, oh, yeah, I know what that's like. My hands sometimes don't really work on with doing that. I said, what do you think the answer is to doing that? And she goes, I think I need to ask the librarian for a mouse. And that wasn't my idea. I just asked her what she thought, and she came up with the idea. Now we'll see if she gets a mouse for her computer, but it's trying to just get my students to think, well, what do I need to be successful in life?
That's so powerful. And again, it really is for all of us. We all have to come up with new things, come up with new ways.
Yep.
I know for me, when I first felt this drive to help people, and it started off with this very casual, I was taking myself through my own personal growth, personal development journey, and, overcoming various things I needed to. And then I started to help interested family and friends. And then you're like, wow, I was like, this is a calling. I want to do this, but it's like, but how? How will I do? We're always encountering these things, right? Or like, becoming a mom. Well, how? Oh my gosh, now I have this new life. I've never done this before. Like how? So we always are coming up with. And I remember too, even with the computer was a big test with a big practical thing, because a computer is this machine, but there are always multiple ways to do each thing on this machine. And so it was very interesting when I started to learn the computer, because I am of an age where it was not automatically part of the program. And, it was like, whoa, there's multiple ways. So I love that you shared that. You are so inspiring and wonderful in all the things that you have achieved and all the ways that you look at life, because it really does apply to all of us in ways that we can, how we can handle when people doubt us, what we can do when people are doubting us, how we can achieve and look at things a different way. Now, you have a blog called Michelle's Mission. What is your mission? Please share.
My mission is to educate, empower, and encourage people with and without disabilities. I want to be able to educate people about learning disabilities because I think that's important for people that have them and for people who don't. I think there's a lot of misinformation that is out there on what learning disabilities are, especially dyscalculia. And I try to put things in a way that maybe somebody can understand that may not know that, but I'll use like maybe a nature analogy or a metaphor. I might talk about the process of accepting my disability as like a flower that's blooming, or I might talk about the thorns that have come with having one. And I also love to be able to combine my photography. I get that chance when I'm on my walks and I don't have a ride, that I get to literally stop and smell the roses. And I get to notice details that other people miss while they're driving. And people will say, wow, you bring out the detail of a flower that I don't see. And I just think to myself, rather than being sad that I don't have a ride, I get that chance to take that shot, and I get to put it on my blog or have it featured in a magazine. And I just love being able to do that, and writing as well. It's definitely a blessing to be able to help others. I also want to encourage other people with disabilities to find out what their dreams are. Everybody has things that they want to do, and I want to encourage others to do that. And I also want people with disabilities to feel empowered in their lives. A lot of times people might think, if you have a disability, that you don't have that power in your life. And a lot of people do. I mean, everybody does. We want to be empowered to be able to go about our lives, not only our challenges that we face on a daily basis, or just maybe how society is, but we want to be empowered with the things that we are good at and that we do enjoy doing.
That's fantastic and wonderful. Now, tell me, what is your best piece of advice for someone who is currently feeling the weight of people telling them they can't do something?
First of all, I would tell the person that you can't control what other people tell you. And you may not be able to control that you might have a disability or another circumstance in your life, but I would just really encourage people to be able to know what they want and to be able to find a way that they can do it. And lastly, that success doesn't always come in the package that we expect, but sometimes it comes in something even better.
Yes, that I can so relate to that. Oh my gosh, we're clapping here. We're clapping. That's absolutely the case. And that is beautifully put. Michelle, it's been such a joy to speak with you and to glean these wonderful, inspiring, and practical ways to maneuver these doubts and to pick ourselves up and to discover a new way to do things. Tell us, where can people connect with you after this and continue with you?
Sure. You can find me at my blog, www.michellesmission.com.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Your Best Podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and even give us a review. And hey, don't forget, there are plenty of resources in the show notes for you. See you in the next episode.